The opioid, what can I say? The opioid crisis exposed in Ondi Timoner's Coming Clean. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I am pleased to bring on to the show today really an amazing documentary filmmaker who, if you have not seen Dig or We Live in Public, her many films, it's just a pleasure and an honor to welcome Ondi Timoner to the Film Threat Podcast. Thank you for doing the show.
Absolutely. Happy to.
Before we talk about your latest documentary, Coming Clean, Dig remains one of the great music docs of all time. So I just need to tell you that. And I wanted to see it again. I don't know if it's on streaming services or I can just buy it digital. I've been rebuying a lot of things that I had on just for physical space reasons. I've gotten rid of a lot of DVDs. I have to get Dig again digital somehow because it's such an amazing documentary.
I think it's available on Amazon.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, okay, I think it's on Amazon. I'm pretty sure it's on iTunes. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's not on Netflix, but I think they fancy themselves like a TV network with fresh, original programming. Although they do have some documentaries, don't they? Old ones? I don't know.
They do, but they do rotate their library because, I mean, you probably know they just get the rights for a certain window and then that's what all they have. But
yeah.
And your documentary, We Live in Public, I kind of feel like that doc is more relevant now than when it first came out. I don't know. It's like, how long ago was that?
So Dig came out in 2004 and We Live in Public came out in 2009.
Wow.
So that's over. So it's 11 years now since We Live in Public premiered at Sundance.
I want to ask you before we talk about Coming Clean, We Live in Public. I just feel like the way things have evolved with social media, that movie is more relevant today. Do you have any thoughts about that film and then just how we've seen social media involve and now become so a bigger part of our real lives than we probably ever intended it to be?
Yeah, it's really freakish. It's a wild and anachronistic experience, for lack of a better term, to watch We Live in Public now. It almost feels like all of the most horrific predictions came true times 100, or they came true. That was like 5 years ago.
Right.
And now that we've been through this pandemic, we have really onlined our lives, to the point where I was just saying to my partner yesterday, I was saying, what's interesting, and I wanted to write this down, is just we see each other now through visual representations of each other. You're watching me through a screen, two screens. I'm holding my phone up to myself, sitting outside in my backyard, and then I'm being filtered through your podcast thing, screen to their screen, and this is even unfiltered. This is whatever the heck comes out of my mouth right now. Social media is curated and specifically chosen, and we're smiling or we're doing this and that. So we're looking at these visual representations that almost like looking over at a neighbor and catching a neighbor doing something or something, like feels so like even just checking the mail or something. I think that's what prompted it. I saw a neighbor meeting with like a worker and I felt like I was invading their privacy because I was looking at them in their actual human state without, we're so used to being mediated now that normal human interaction is becoming something of the past or like a very rarefied experience, certainly now these days with the isolation we're in. So it's really an interesting time to look at the evolution of relationships and of our own consciousness in relation to physical contact and love and connection. And so actually I'm working on a film now, Chris, that I've been started in November 2019 because of my movie Coming Clean. And the isolation and addiction that I documented that's driving the opioid epidemic. I started looking at the biological drive towards love and connection that we have as humans and where we're falling short or where that's become kind of tweaked in our society. So I started that with scientists in November of 19. And then the pandemic broke out. And so I went to a bunch of different people, sought people in all kinds of different relationships, and started tracking them over this year. Um, so that project's called Alone Together. So it's in a way a follow up to We Live in Public, just very different. We're almost in our pods and our capsules, but our pods and our capsules are the surroundings that we're in here.
I was going to
Does
ask.
that make sense?
It does make sense, but I was going to ask you if you were going to do a follow up, and that's perfect because, like I say, the ideas are as relevant or more now than when you first made that film, and especially with the way things have evolved. I read the book, the Jaron Lanier book, the one about the 10 reasons to
stay off social media.
Yeah, exactly. This book, the one with the cat on it. 10 arguments for deleting your social media accounts right now. I feel like in some ways, like social media, just between so many little things that have happened or, just bubbled up in the public's consciousness, having social media accounts can be like a loaded gun. Careers and lives can be ruined with tweets. I mean, we've seen how it's affected, our elected officials, right? Like that shit show. So I'm really curious to see what you do with this documentary, this new one.
Well, it's amazing that cutting Donald Trump off Twitter was enough to basically muzzle him, to silence him. Cutting him off all social media. That was it. And that's the power of all of us to communicate with one another that these sites possess. They hold that power, and they hold our communications in record. We have a digital trail now, and that's permanent. And it's very hard for teenagers to understand that, for example, in terms of what they put out there. And we were kind of the first ones to say that. We were definitely the first ones to say that with We Live in Public. We said, what you put out is never yours to make. What you make public is never yours to make private again. That was revelatory information in 2009, believe it or not. Like 3 weeks later, the LA Times came out with something, an article about Facebook, and that they owned our content. People were up in arms, but it was actually stated first in our movie with my narration, much to my chagrin. Last thing I wanted to do was narrate my own movie, but it came down to all my producing partners held me down and made me do it. So I figured, since I was in the story, because I was in the Capsule Hotel back in 1999, I figured it didn't break my rules of narration really not being omniscient. I don't have too many rules, but that's one of them. In Dig, like Courtney does the narration, from the Dandy Warhols. I like to kind of keep the insular bubble of the world that you're in sacred, if there's narration at all. So, but I do digress into filmmaking stuff. Anyway, for you or me to be off social media would be problematic to our careers.
Right.
And I did basically take the pandemic off social media. I forgot about social media, and I didn't feel like documenting Groundhog Day for everyone else. My personal Groundhog Day was relevant. And I gave a TED talk about the misuse of the internet, for dopamine hits. And I feel like myself being part of that I'm not walking the walk. If I'm saying, hey, be careful of just using it to get hits of dopamine and putting senseless, stupid things up there and wasting your time, and, use the power you have in your pocket for so much good that you can do. And there is so much good that can come from us organizing, and that does so many revolutions that have happened thanks to the internet. So, it's just a double-edged sword. It can be used for a lot of good or a lot of evil. But I went off social media without even realizing it. And all of a sudden 8 months had gone by or something, and I had not posted anything because I didn't have a movie coming out,
Right.
And I re-engaged when I had a movie coming out, because I wanted to let people know that this is an important film that they should take a look at. We're all touched by the epidemic at this point, and all of us are touched by the isolation. We have more ability to have compassion and to break down this stigma than we ever have in human history. At least in modern history, I should say. So it's a really important time for this film, and a very important film that I put a lot of my heart into. But I realized, oh my God, I haven't engaged with anyone online in like 8 months. And then I realized friends had parents die, all this stuff that I missed because I had not been on Facebook.
Wow. Well, I'll say the times that I have taken a vacation from social media, I don't miss it. I don't
Yeah.
miss it at all. And my use of social media, I kind of feel like friends of mine who quit smoking that bum cigarettes off other people. It's like, I don't use social media that much, but every once in a while I'll do something. And for the most part, I just use it to promote what I'm doing at Film Threat or other projects that I'm
But that's
involved in.
valuable. That's not you just promoting
Right.
yourself. You know, if you were doing little like sock hop videos in your house, you know, you could go on TikTok, but if you were using your social feed to, you know, generate some kind of attention for yourself for vanity purposes, that is where I feel like it's a detrimental aspect of our like cultural whatever norm now. You know,
Well,
it just
yeah.
takes away from, it numbs us and it takes away from our attention towards things that matter. Whereas, you know, Film Threat is trying to bring attention to independent film and other artistic endeavors that matter, that move society, the dialogue forward, you know? So,
That's been my mission. You
yeah.
know, I do feel fortunate that my kids have no interest in social media. They're both in their 20s,
Wow.
and they sort of were at this thing where it's like Facebook was becoming popular, but they were getting out of high school and they just didn't care. And now they post rarely, if at all. And
Wow.
yeah, I know it's weird. They're very much, they don't care about TikTok dances, which, you know, I don't care about TikTok dances. I think it's,
No.
you know, it's you know, the occasional meme will be entertaining, but and it's a convenient way to express an idea. Memes, I prefer those. But I think the early Egyptians, they created the first memes. If you think about it, you know, their pictography. But let's
We could
back
go on and on about
now
it.
we're going off on tangent, which is the typical conversation. But like Coming Clean, your documentary, and if there's one of the few things that Donald Trump actually did that was actually good was he brought attention to it by even mentioning it, because it really irks me that it is not. This is not something that is in the public conversation. That what these pharmaceutical companies have done is criminal, and they have not, as you point out in your documentary, they have not paid at all. And you compare it to the BP oil spill,
Yeah.
right, where they spent all this money to clean up that, and you've got more money that's been lost and lives disrupted and destroyed because of this, and the money's not there. What I mean, the documentary is heartfelt and chilling at the same time. It's
Thank you.
chilling that it you know, why is this not more in the public conversation? Why is this not paying attention to? And how has this industry been allowed to get away with this without any accountability?
So, I think that it's been harder than ever to bring attention to this because of the pandemic. Um, it's very difficult for people to pay attention to an epidemic when there's a pandemic, and you know, 400,000 people are dead, and in this case, 80,000 people die every year. So it seems like a smaller number, and right now, these people are numbers. The way that it's relayed in the media, it's like as if they're just numbers. And um, the movie, the intention of the film is to make them more than numbers and to show that when we connect, policy changes, our hearts open, our understanding opens. And so in the movie, you're actually meeting people who are recovering addicts, connecting with, on a very personal level, with policy leaders. And those policy leaders are actually um, changing law, literally changing funding apparatus. All of that is shifting because of their direct relationship with these people who are in recovery. So in a way, everyone is in the process of transforming during the film, and the idea is hopefully for us to understand this on a more personal level and to realize with the message in the medium that connection is the opposite of addiction, and that we need to connect. We need to stop facing, you know, stop basically thinking, oh, it's those people, or they're hopeless, or they're useless. They're costing $1 million a year, each one of them, to keep alive with their overdoses. It's not like a money saving venture, even if you're cold hearted, to think that, putting people in jail or offering them 3 days treatment, or not addressing this as a super duper priority is helpful. It's not helpful on any level. I mean, there's kids growing up without parents, tons of that happening. There's, just an unnecessary toll of human life. And I think it's because people think it's a moral choice. It's like it's immoral to be an addict. They're choosing this. And that's just not the case. It couldn't be further from the case. So, well, it's a disease. It comes from, the addiction is a very fast onset that happens to 80% of people right off the bat. And they're overprescribed medication because doctors are incentivized by companies, pharmaceutical companies, to do that. There's even a company that's tracking your pharmaceutical information and making sure that doctors who are prescribing, a certain other kind of drug start prescribing more opioids. It's a very targeted, profit-driven conspiracy against the American people. And it's not understood to be that way. And the other part that's really important, Chris, is to understand that the reason people are becoming addicted is because we don't treat mental health equally in this country. We don't treat it as the underlying problem. We treat it as something that is a symptom, or as something that is not necessarily insurable. It's over 50% of America is suffering from some kind of mental illness. And it could be like an illness, or it could be just that they're depressed, at this point. That's rampant. Suicide rates are way up. But there's a direct relationship between trauma and addiction. And when these pills are prescribed, and you're, for a back injury or for a facelift or something, like, as soon as the pills are done, like, once the physical pain has subsided some days later, the drug is still compelling to the patient because they're not feeling the pain of their mental affliction anymore. But that's just temporary. That's just being blocked for that moment. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. About 6 months ago, I had my appendix out, emergency appendectomy. And there was a fear. I said, I don't want to I know you're going to give me some painkillers. I don't want anything that's addictive. I'll just take the pain. I was just in fear that they would give me some sort of drug that I'm at the point now where I don't trust the pharmaceutical industry because it profits over people. And it just seems so obvious. I mean, when did we have so many? I don't remember so many drug commercials. I'm Gen X, right? So I don't remember there being so many drug commercials that just play during sports or just like regular events. Like, why am I being subjected to so many types of prescription drug commercials? This industry is out of control.
Right. Yeah. I think it really was Arthur Sackler who innovated marketing in a big way in the pharmaceutical business. I mean, he really went about saying, you know what, we can market these drugs. And where a lot of times like with the vaccine, for example, the drugs are being designed or being created to help us. In this case, this drug they knew was addictive. They knew that it was very addictive right off the bat. And what did they do? They literally made commercials saying that it was less than 1% addictive, and that really the only side effect was constipation. So they knew what they were doing, and they should be serving massive life sentences right now for killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. And that's not happening. Well, and I'm hoping that, this film can get to the White House, and certainly to the top levels of government and to all the decision makers. There's a consortium of governors that meet. I really hope it gets there. This is really, I designed it kind of like to be almost like a Food Inc. for addiction. It's almost everything that you need to know. And I don't usually make films that are quite so massive in the scope. It was very ambitious to do, but I realized there was nothing out there that was taking this on in that way. There's not a single film that really says, well, this is how it happened, and this is what we need to do to get out of it, on a policy level, on a personal level, you know. And I felt like, for whatever it's worth, I have to do that, you know, hopefully. And now the struggle is getting people to pay attention to it. You know, NPR just did an incredible review of it. Um, that was super important, but we need to get it picked up by a streamer. You know, it needs to be out there so people can actually see it.
Well,
And you know, if it was about one celebrity suffering from a heroin addiction, it would be picked up in a minute. That's the irony of the business we're in. But it'll get there. It's a really strong film, thanks to the courage and honesty and authenticity of the people in it. Which I got to tell you, in all my years of making movies, I have never had such an eye-opening experience myself, such an inspiring experience than working with the people in this film. We're like family now, because it's a vitally important subject, and the only way to break through it is through compassion and transparency. So
I'm just not surprised, knowing your previous work, like how you really show the emotional cost of this. These aren't people that are like, I'm into drugs, I'm going to start taking this drug. These are just regular people who suffered accidents where they experienced pain, took these painkillers, and became addicted.
yeah,
And the really amazing part you show, this I'm forgetting the name of the narrator, or the guy with the British accent that's so
Johan
oh,
Hari.
he's great.
He wrote the
Johan is
book
amazing.
Chasing the Scream. Yeah.
Yeah, he tells the story about the rats. I'd heard about this experiment where the sort of drug-laced water that they gave a rat that was isolated, and then you offer regular water and drug-laced water to a community of rats, and after a while they're just not into the drug-laced water. It's really about that human connection. I feel like with the pandemic must have, and I'm sure there's, I don't know how much data exists on this right now. I mean, we still don't know the full cost of the pandemic. We know the human cost and the lives lost due to, you know, the virus, but all the other residual costs. And I feel like we're going to find out what that is. Depression and suicide is we don't have that data amassed yet, but that part of your film really blew my mind. And also the fact that you really focus on the emotional aspects. I mean, you get to know the people in this movie. It's incredibly heartfelt.
It would be really difficult, for this film to do what it needs to do without having tracked those people over the last few years, and having found people like I did. But I got to tell you, we went to a bunch of treatment facilities, and that is just the way, it is in treatment. People are so raw and honest. They have to be. They have to shed the shame in order to recover. And the only way to do that is to be absolutely open about the things that are haunting them, that they did in their addiction, and to forgive themselves. And that happens when people in the group say, I feel you, I felt that way too. Or, you know, relate on some way, you know, say, yeah, I was abused as a child as well. Or I also abandoned my children when I went to live in a park, or whatever that is. I stole from my parents, you know, whatever that is, to say it in the group, whether it's AA or whether it's a different kind of treatment facility. We went to one that was music based, called, gosh, what was it called? Oh my God, I'm forgetting. Not Music Cares. I'm thinking of the Grammy organization. Recovery Unplugged. Recovery Unplugged. Oh my gosh, they're forming bands, they're using art, you know, all of this. It's really, it's beautiful to to um, to see people giving each other that kind of support. It makes me feel like we all need treatment, like in our society. We all need that. And in a way, you know, as overdose deaths are doubling due to the isolation and, you know, lack of care being given during COVID-19 to this epidemic, overdose deaths are doubling. It's a very, very serious, serious problem. fentanyl related deaths are up 230%. There's a new Bad Batch that Dave Navarro, the legendary guitarist who has been supporting the release of Coming Clean, he's lost 4 friends in the first few weeks of just 2021 to this. As much as all of that is happening, so is a reckoning that we are having, I think, as individuals with how disconnected we were as a society from what matters and how much artifice we did display, which is kind of what we talked about at the beginning of our conversation today, Chris. Like, you know, there is a lot of that artifice on social media, but the fact that we're Zooming, you know, that I'm sitting here like in sweatpants in my backyard talking to you right now, like we are all kind of on a level playing field in our homes and looking at our lives and saying, what do I want to do with my life? You know, it could be snuffed out in an instant. Most all of us have had people die this year, facing our mortality. It's a really important time to turn around and connect with people that we're worried about, um, you know, and really understand that we're not alone, and to reach out and to, it's like, it sounds simple and sounds, you know, might sound hippy dippy, but that is really the first step to take right now, is to realize that even if someone's looks like they have their shit together, that they really might not. If you get a sense that they're lonely, reach out to them, because it's an epidemic in and of itself, and it's driving the opioid epidemic in a big way.
Well, I really want to see this film get the exposure that it deserves, because it's such an important issue, and you really just every way of coming at it, you really just cover all the bases, but in a way that humanizes every aspect of it. It's not a clinical documentary, right? I mean, I would not have expected that from you. So.
No, I wouldn't make that, but I do, you know, I am an egghead at heart. I am a Yaley, you know, and I didn't want to just brush over the important data that we need to understand, because as 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 numbing and distancing as numbers can be, it's also extremely important to realize the massivity of the toll.
Right.
And just the percentage of people that are walking around with childhood trauma that is driving their addiction. They have no fault in this. They
Mhm.
need our help. This is not something that they want. They are addicted, and it's they're afraid to say it. 80% of people who are addicted aren't even coming out about it because they're scared to lose their relationships, their homes, their jobs. We have got to break this down. And so I've never personally had my heart and mind opened by a film that I've made, more than this one. And it's been a very challenging film to distill down to a feature length experience. But I hope that people will just, it took me years actually, Chris, to watch Food Inc., just to admit that to you, because I just didn't want to know how much I was poisoning my body and that of my child. And the second I watched it, I was like, I wish I'd watched it 2 years ago when it came out. Um, I remember I just hadn't seen it, and forced to watch it. I wasn't in the academy at that point, I don't think. And like, there was no, I could avoid it. And then I was sorry I did. And I hope that people will just take that plunge with this movie, because it'll actually make you feel better. The idea of this film is also that there was never a film that had solutions and recovery in it and hope in it. And you can leave this film knowing that there's people working on the front lines who are fabulous, and they are on it. And there's more where those people came from. And we can do our part. You don't have to leave feeling hopeless or helpless. So yeah, it can be, I think it's a really uplifting film at the same time that it's obviously about a very dark subject. And we try to do that with animation,
Right.
with 16
Yeah.
millimeter, with Super 8, with music, to make this like a really flowing cinematic experience that's beautiful.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the fact that it is hopeful. This is not a dour, depressing. I mean, there are depressing aspects of it that are shocking, but you really left on a hopeful note. So the movie is out in virtual cinemas, or is it available?
Yeah, it's out in virtual cinema now, which means that anyone in the nation can watch it if you're seeing this. And I haven't tested it because I'm not getting on airplanes these days for the first time ever. It'll be a year that I didn't fly, which is a short film in and of itself, just because the physiological difference that we feel not getting on an airplane is marked. I was on a plane every week before, but I haven't tested it by leaving the country and seeing whether you can watch it online, but I think you can. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. So wherever you're watching this show, all you got to do is go to comingcleanmovie.com, and then you can link to the film from there. It's at Lemley Cinema, which is my favorite local cinema. They have several in LA, and it's their taste is fabulous. And yeah, they're not open now, but they're open online. And Greg Lemley has his picks, and it's really a cool experience. The other thing is we did a Q&A with Dave Navarro and the whole cast. That is only available with the virtual cinema experience. So cool. Step one on our release is this virtual cinema experience. And then when things warm up, we're doing drive-ins. We're doing more virtual cinema screenings that are coming up, and one-offs in Canada as well in the coming months. So Coming Clean Movie, sign up there for sure. And it's the same on social media too. And then hopefully we'll be everywhere very soon as well, and on a streamer. So.
Well, Ondi Timoner, it's a pleasure to talk to you on the Film Threat podcast. You have to come back.
I would love to.
For your next film. And we didn't realize before we started recording this, we realized we're neighbors. We're very close. And that Lemley, there's a Lemley in Pasadena that's walkable from my place.
I love that. Yeah. Sometimes I moderate Q&As for fellow filmmakers there. I'm always happy to helm the Pasadena branch of things. I realized when I first came to Pasadena that there's like 4 times the amount of trees. So if you're watching this and you're not from the Southland of California, you don't know that Pasadena is like a Rockwell painting. It's literally, to look out over it, you just see trees. And I thought, I need to live here. Like, is that possible? It's like Disneyland or something. It's so clean.
Yeah, it reminds me of where I grew up in Michigan. A lot of trees there.
Yeah, a lot of films shoot here and shoot where I live in Altadena in the mountains. Mm-hmm. There's every different kind of architecture done beautifully. Yeah. So walking around here is an absolute treat. It's definitely a great place to quarantine if we should have another pandemic. Highly recommend Altadena for a pandemic.
Great.
Right.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thanks, Chris. And send me a text. I have something to relay to you after this.
Okay. I will. Okay. Talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Moving, moving, moving.